So I decided not to finish this challenge on my own because it's too hard. And I was looking through a bunch of solutions on the internet. I looked at all of them, I think, and I tried a bunch of them on my own later, and I couldn't figure out how to do it. So I ended up copying the Faraday Academy solution, but the problem is that it was giving me this mistake here, this error on this part. So I copied the exact way that she did it, but it wasn't giving me the right answer. So I figured out how to solve this. And here's the solution, in case you just want to see the solution. So here's the head class, here's the experiment, and then here's the other function that she created to compare both lists. So if you want to just copy that, I suggest you study it because I learned a lot doing this challenge, even though I didn't complete it on my own. So now I'm gonna walk you through what's wrong with her solution and why this isn't working. I'm gonna use this tool called Python Tutor, which is great for beginners and probably advanced people that wanna see and visualize the code. So I copied her code here, and then I figured out which test wasn't passing after I fixed this, and I'm gonna use this test as an example. So let me walk you through what's going on here. So first, the class is created, then it calls the def experiment, which, well, first is initializing all the functions and the class, then it creates a head. You use this init method. The self.contents here, I thought that I needed to put this outside of the init function because they say it's an instance variable, but that's not correct. You have to initiate it within the init function. This keywords here is because they're gonna pass a list of arguments, but these arguments are equal to a specific value. So this is the purpose of using this. If the values were not equal, if the arguments were not equal to a specific value, you would use only 1 star, and that would mean that you're taking all the arguments. This is for when you are taking all the key arguments that are given. So you're going to create this list, then you're going to loop through the arguments, which is a dictionary, and you're going to put them in the self.content list. Then after you do that, you're going to call the probability function, which is defined here, experiment function, which is equal to probability here. You're going to pass all these values. Then here you're going to loop through the number of experiments, which is the number of experiments you have to, it's given here. The number of times that this function will run. Then here you're going to create a copy of the heads list. Then you're going to call the draw function of the head. And that's where the problem is. Because here you only created balls here. It's the function. And then you're making number of balls drawn, which is 20. So this is the amount of balls that will be drawn each time from the head class, each time you run this function. And it's given by the user here. It's an arbitrary number. Then you create an empty list. Then you loop through this list. This empty list is the list that is here, expected balls. You have to put them on a list so you can compare them later to find out what's the probability that the list that you chose here is gonna the list that it's in class head is gonna contain the list that you put here. So you create this list, then you're gonna call this function here that she created, which compares both lists. the list on the class set and the list you created and the list on the class set. But the issue here is that balls is not a list. A list, the way that that she did it and then I copied, I think I copied exactly like she did it. And when she did it, it wasn't working. It was working for her, but when I tried to do it, it gave me that error. So you can see here that this arrow here, actual balls, is pointing to a function. So this loop here is supposed to compare both lists. But when you get here, B is not a element because actual balls is not a list. It's a function. So that's why it's not comparing and it's giving me this error here. So now I'm gonna show you how I fix this. Actually, I should copy just this. So the way that I solve this is exactly the same thing that is gonna happen the first time. But once you call this experiment function, I made another variable here that is equal to the balls function with the number of balls drawn. And this is gonna call the draw function, and it's gonna assign the return value to this variable. And then I modify this draw function because it wasn't working the way that she did it. So here, in case the number of balls drawn, which was the case that wasn't working, is bigger than the length of the list, this means that the list that they are giving is bigger than the list of the class set itself. So the probability should be 1 because the list of the hats is always going to be bigger than the one you gave it. So you make this empty list here equals to a copy of self.contents, and then returns this list, and it keeps going. Then creates the list that the user gave. It's a little slow because there's a lot of steps. Now it's gonna compare. It's gonna call this function. It's gonna compare both lists to see what's the probability. If all the balls on the list that the user gave are on the list of the hat, it's gonna return true, and if not, it's gonna return false. And if it returns true, it's gonna run this, which is gonna increase the count by 1. So you can see here the M is true. It ran twice. So the other case that, in case that the list is smaller than the list of the class sets, I'm running a while loop here, and then I'm making the duration of the while loop equal to the number that they gave, which is this 20 here. No, it's not the 20. No, yeah. Add expected balls. Yeah, it's 20, I think. Yeah, I'm not sure, but it's the number they give for the amount of times that. Yeah, I think it's 20. So where was I? Yeah. Then I'm gonna create a random number that is gonna be an int from 0 to the length of the list of the class sets minus 1. So this number chooses a random number from the index of the list of the class sets. Then I'm gonna append the element that is on the self.contents list with the index of this random number generated. So is gonna be one random element of this list with the index that's gonna be randomly generated each time. Then after I append this element to this list here, it's gonna be, I'm gonna remove this from the list so I don't pick the same element twice. That's what they tell you to do on the problem. After I do that, I decrease the number by 1 so it doesn't loop forever. And once it has the whole list, in this example you can see, but once you have the whole list, you're gonna return this list here, which is the list you created. And then it's gonna keep going on this function here. It's gonna create this list and it's gonna compare both lists. And if they are equal, it's gonna increase by 1. And then you take the amount of times that they were equal, or the bigger list, the hat list contained the list that was given, and you're gonna divide this by the number of times that this function runs. So you get the probability of the user that this list right here that was given is contained on the class list, which is bigger. And then you're gonna return that. So I'm just gonna show you here, so you see that it works. Yeah, ran just 3 tests in, yeah, and all of them pass. So I think that's pretty much it. I suggest you search this deep copy and this random generation stuff, because it's really, yeah, I learned a lot while researching these things, and it's a very difficult problem. So yeah, you wanna just copy the code, do you? But I suggest you try to understand what's going on. So yeah. And I'm gonna put all the other solutions, the link to the other solutions on the description, in case you want to see the way that other people did it. I tested all of them and the probability wasn't working. They were failing the last test. So yeah, this seems to be the only one that was working for me. So yeah, see you.